You've heard it 1,000 times. Red wine is good for your heart. But what if I told you the same glass is silently wrecking your metabolism, blocking fat burning, and hijacking your liver's recovery? If you're using keto to heal, this might change everything. Hey everyone, my name is Marc Bates. I'm a metabolic health coach, and this is part of my question and answer series. Is red wine really heart healthy? The metabolic truth about alcohol. So let's get to the question. You've laid out a complex case for why alcohol and ketosis don't mix well metabolically. But I know you work with clients who've heard about the French paradox and moderate drinking supposed cardiovascular benefits. How do you reconcile those purported benefits with everything we've just discussed about metabolic disruption? Is there any scenario where the cardiovascular upside outweighs the ketogenic downside? Well, that's a good question. It's very sharp because you got to really question this, especially for clients who are using or trying to justify moderately drinking or moderate drinking under the comforting umbrella of the French paradox or red wine is heart healthy. Well, here's how I reconcile it with the ketogenic or carnivore metabolic health framework. Okay? First, let's debunk the French paradox. The French paradox suggests, despite a high saturated fat intake, the French have low cardiovascular disease rates, possibly because of red wine. Well, this narrative became popular in the 1990s after epidemiologist Serge Renaud suggested red wine's polyphenols, notably resveratrol, were protective. But here's what's often left out. And these are problems with the French paradox theory. One, French cardiovascular deaths were underreported due to coding differences in mortality data. So the data wasn't good. French people eat real food, very few industrial seed oils, fewer processed carbs, and more time between meals. That's good. Moderation meant 2 ounces of wine, often with meals, not 2 glasses nightly on the couch. Okay? And importantly, the benefits attributed to red wine have not held up in randomized trials when adjusted for diet, insulin resistance, or lifestyle. The polyphenol argument is weak when the person is insulin resistant, inflamed, or chronically stressed. Okay, so resveratrol is not the answer to everything. Okay, now let's look at two realities here. You have purported cardiovascular upside and the documented ketogenic downside. So low dose alcohol. On the high side, mild increase in HDL, slight reduction in fibrinogen, and improved social bonding. Yeah, social bonding. Yeah, that's good. And I guess that is true. On the downside, it suppresses ketone production, disrupts fat oxidation, elevates triglycerides, and alters neurotransmitter balance. Overall, more on the downside. Polyphenols in wine. Antioxidant effects, mostly theoretical at typical doses. Okay? On the downside, compromised liver function negates benefit, dose too low to matter metabolically. Yeah, for the polyphenols. Okay, stress reduction. So, on the upside, it can lower cortisol. You do feel a little bit better with maybe a little bit of wine in you, but only in certain settings. With meals, when you're socializing, you have a low baseline stress. On the downside, paradoxical rebound effect later. Insomnia, increased morning cortisol, and reactive hypoglycemia. And finally, on the upside, the net result in metabolically healthy people, it may be neutral to slightly beneficial. Okay? On the downside, in metabolically unwell people, most keto clients that are out there, clearly harmful. So, you gotta weigh that in proportion. Okay. In ketogenic clients, the cost is higher. So if you're trying to get into ketosis for health and for healing, okay, so most clients coming to keto or carnivore are not cardiovascularly robust Mediterranean non-smokers. They're metabolically unwell. They have insulin resistance, stress is inflamed, they're trying to lose visceral fat, and they're rebuilding liver function and gut health. For these individuals, alcohol does not act like a health elixir. It acts more like a hand grenade lobbed at the metabolic repair process. Even moderate drinking raises triglycerides, reduces insulin sensitivity, impairs HRV, that's heart rate variability, and deep sleep, elevates liver enzymes and oxidative stress, and disrupts fat loss. So even if there's a theoretical cardioprotective window, it does not apply to people recovering. All right? Where it might be acceptable, and there's always, give and take on everything. In the context of a metabolically flexible individual, low visceral fat, high insulin sensitivity, good liver enzyme, alcohol has less metabolic impact and the liver can rebound quickly. So you can work with that. If it's consumed with food, especially high protein fat meals, those foods slow alcohol absorption, blunt any glucose disruption. Okay, infrequent use, one time every few weeks. Okay, liver recovers, NAD plus pool rebounds, and ketones normalize fairly quickly if you don't do this too often. Low quantity, less than the standard drink for women, for one standard drink for women, and less than 2 standard drinks for men. Less redox stress, lower acetate load, minimal fat oxidation suppression. But once again, feed that back to, are you metabolically flexible before you even drink this stuff? And specific compounds, i.e. dry red wine, neat spirits. Once again, they have fewer additives and sugars, less impact on insulin, blood glucose, but go right back to that first point. Are you metabolically flexible already, which means you're in good health to begin with? Then a drink once in a while is not going to kill you. Right? All right. So what I tell people, if you're using keto to reverse insulin resistance, autoimmune issues, liver dysfunction, or cognitive decline, alcohol is a brake on the healing process. You may still drink occasionally, but let's not call it therapeutic. Let's be honest about the trade-offs. Okay? And then you got to remember, ketones drop to near zero for 12 to 48 hours. Glucose becomes more erratic. Your heart rate variability, HRV, tanks the next morning, and your triglycerides or your GGT tends to creep up over time. So the net effects are pretty bad. You want to try to avoid it. Okay, final thought. The moderate alcohol is heart healthy claim was based on epidemiologically based trials, not controlled trials, research. So epidemiology is really not great science. It's pretty much all you have with nutrition, but it's not great science. Applies, if at all, only to non-obese, insulin-sensitive Mediterranean lifestyle populations. Ignores the brain, liver, hormonal, mitochondrial, and consequences of alcohol. So you always have to be aware of that. And fails to acknowledge that in metabolically compromised individuals, i.e., most of the people who are coming to me for help, alcohol is a metabolic saboteur, not a benefit. So, therapeutic use of alcohol is largely a myth in the ketogenic context. And the better you understand your metabolic status, the more that truth will become self-evident. All right? So, thanks for watching. If you have any comments or questions, leave them in the appropriate section. Remember, we are a community here. We're trying to help everyone learn and go forward with life. If you have a question or if you have something you think you'd like me to cover in more detail, please leave it in the comments, and I'll try to move on to it as fast as I can. All right? And as always, please like, subscribe, share this video with somebody you like who needs it. Share it with somebody you don't like. It just helps people all around. All right? Thank you very much.